1 Evening News at 5.
Earthquakes are rattling Greece's volcanic island of Santorini every few minutes.
Authorities are bolstering emergency plans, preparing for a possible larger quake. Here at home, members of the Greek community are doing their best to help those affected. WGN's Dana Rebick joins us now with more. Hi, Dana.
Hi. Well, so far, these earthquakes have been ranging in magnitude from 3 to 5.2. Many people trying to get off the island of Santorini, fearing that if a larger quake does hit, it could make it impossible to leave. A Chicago area woman who was born in Greece and still has family there is trying to do what she can to help.
When you go to Santorini, as you approach Santorini, you see the most magnificent, beautiful homes.
Whitewashed buildings with blue rooftops built cliffside above the Aegean Sea.
I have family in Greece. I have my brother, his wife, their 4 children. My kids have a home, right across from there. So we're not far from there.
A popular tourist area that looks like a ghost town today, with thousands of residents, seasonal workers, and visitors trying to evacuate. Travel to the island is now restricted after hundreds of undersea earthquakes have jolted the region since Saturday.
What we are seeing now with all these earthquakes occurring in such a short period of time in such a small area is indeed a little bit unusual, right? Earthquakes do come in bouts. Usually it's a larger earthquake followed by a lot of smaller aftershocks.
Northwestern professor Suzanne Vanderlee says the seismic activity could be what's known as a swarm of smaller earthquakes that could last a few weeks, but could be indicative of something else.
So one of the things is a larger earthquake. The other thing could be a volcanic eruption.
Public events have been canceled and schools closed through Friday. Greece also deploying emergency rescue crews to Santorini on standby. Residents asked to avoid large indoor gatherings and areas where rock slides could occur. So far, quakes have caused some cracks in older buildings, but no injuries have been reported.
It is scary. It is scary. It is scary because, first of all, where are you going to put all those people?
Eleni Bousis starting a GoFundMe page to help provide emergency shelter and pay for transportation off the island of Santorini for those still stuck there.
Well, all this money hopefully will go to get all the people out, get them situated, and I pray that people will go back, but I think it's too soon to make any kind of prediction.
Greek airlines have doubled flights from Santorini to Athens since Monday. If you'd like to help donate and help these evacuees, we do have a link to that GoFundMe page on our website. Live in Glencoe, Dana Rebick, WGN News.
Thank you, Dana.
Hundreds of people are evacuating a Greek island because of a series of undersea earthquakes.
More than 200 of them have been detected in Santorini. Rescue teams are taking ferries full of residents away from the stricken area. Scientists have growing concerns because of the level of activity that may indicate a powerful earthquake is on the way this week.
Watch breaking news on YouTube. Subscribe to ABC7 Chicago Eyewitness News.
We're here in Santorini, where the normally busy clifftop streets have fallen quiet. Behind me, you can see a caldera, a volcanic crater. But these famous views that draw millions each year are now being enjoyed by just a handful of visitors. It's the 5th day of continuous seismic activity in the region, with undersea earthquakes of up to magnitude 5. The authorities have expanded precautionary measures to 13 islands. Experts say the tremors are unrelated to volcanic activity, but the frequency, sometimes every few minutes, has led to thousands of residents and seasonal workers leaving to temporarily relocate. These streets are typically bustling even in the off-season. Local authorities are implementing widespread precautions. Schools are closed, public events cancelled, and construction work has been halted in vulnerable areas. Ferry operators have put on extra services to accommodate those who want to leave, but not everyone is going. Some residents, particularly those who have lived here for decades, are choosing to stay, with a small number of tourists who are finding themselves with an unusually peaceful version of Santorini to themselves.
In the early hours of Tuesday morning, hundreds of people crowded the port in Santorini to board a ferry and reach safety in Athens. A tremor with a magnitude of 4.9 was recorded by the European Mediterranean Seismological Center on the Greek island, whose popular villages cling to steep cliffs over the sea. Here is Santorini's mayor, Nikos Zorzos.
We must deal with it with patience and calm. This seismic activity may last many weeks.
Since last Friday, hundreds of quakes have been registered every few minutes in the sea between the volcanic islands of Santorini and Amorgos.
We have designated shelter areas on level surfaces for people without structures. There are 8 places that can accommodate them. We have recorded all individuals with special needs who may require transfer at some point during an event. We have made a food distribution plan for those who will be outdoors.
With seismologists estimating that the intense seismic activity could last for days or even weeks, people were advised to stay out of coastal areas. Schools in Santorini and the nearby islands of Ios, Amorgos and Anafi were also shut down until Friday. However, not everyone was eager to leave. Here is local resident Eftichis Diamantopoulos.
We will stay here. Why should we leave? If something happens, it happens. Oh well, we are locals. We were born here. We are guarding Thermopylae. There has been seismic activity. Whatever will happen will happen. There is no reason to panic.
Greece sits at the boundary of the African and Eurasian tectonic plates, whose constant interaction prompts frequent quakes. It is one of the most earthquake-prone countries in Europe.
More than 200 earthquakes have been recorded in just 4 days on and around the Greek island of Santorini, also nicknamed Instagram Island.
Το βράδυ δεν μπορούσαμε, βασικά δεν κοιμήθηκε κανένας. Ούτε η γυναίκα κοιμήθηκε, το μικρός μόνο λίγο, αλλά έκανε πολύ μεγάλο. Δηλαδή χτύπησε ένα 4,9 σίγουρα, ένα 4,7 και μέσα στο σπίτι δηλαδή ακούστηκε πάρα πολύ δυνατά. Βγήκαμε έξω, τρέχαμε. Γι' αυτό δεν μπορούμε να κάτσουμε άλλο εδώ πέρα.
Many residents have decided to evacuate, but they say finding ways to leave has been difficult. Multiple airlines announced additional flights to help get people off the island.
Τόσο πολύ, ψάχνουμε 2 μέρες να βρούμε εισιτήρια, δεν βρίσκουμε ούτε για καράβι, ούτε για αεροπλάνο, δεν υπάρχουν. Και χθες το βράδυ που έφυγε το τελευταίο, που πήγαμε να κλείσουμε εισιτήριο, δεν υπήρχε τίποτα, αεροπλάνα όλα κλεισμένα. Βάλανε κάτι έξτρα πτήσεις τώρα, αλλά τα εισιτήρια στο αεροδρόμιο τα έχουν πάει, είναι πανάκριβα, τα έχουν πάει 300 με 450 ευρώ το άτομο. Δεν βρίσκεις θέσεις.
The island is no stranger to earthquakes, nor do they seem to deter the 3.4 million people who visit Santorini each year.
Η προσωπική μου εμπειρία είναι ότι δεν έχω ξαναγιώσει τόσο έντονο το σεισμό και τόσο σύντομα κάθε 10 λεπτά, κάθε 20 λεπτά δεν το έχω ξαναγιώσει. Πρώτη φορά. Δεν έχω εμπειρία.
Τα βλέπετε και μόνοι σας ότι ο κόσμος θέλει να φύγει. Γιατί δεν υπάρχει διαφυγή. Δηλαδή, αν ομιγέννητο γίνει κάτι στον Αθηνό, έχουμε αποκλειστεί. Γιατί έχουμε θάλασσα και ουρανό.
Αλλά αυτή η φορά είναι τα πράγματα σοβαρά. Και χτες βράδυ θέλω να σας πω, τα έβγαλα έξω από το σπίτι μου και μύτσικα όρτια. Φοβήθηκα να μπω στο σπίτι. Και σήμερα είπα θα φύγω, θα πάω να άξω τουλάχιστον ένα νησί που είναι κοντά να φύγω μέχρι να δω τι θα γίνει. Να ερεμήσω τα πράγματα.
Yesterday, more than 300 earthquakes struck throughout the day northeast of the famed island of Santorini, of which at least 100 were potentially large enough to be physically felt by nearby residents. As a result of this ongoing seismic crisis, which is now in its 13th day, all schools were closed at least until Thursday across at least 14 regional islands, up from 5 islands on Monday, meaning all schools in an area home to a population of 115,250 people. Earthquakes as a whole have every day gotten larger in average magnitude, larger in terms of the strongest earthquake magnitude produced, and largely more numerous. For example, while the largest quake to strike on January 26th was a 2.1, on January 28th it was a 2.7, a 3.1 on the 30th, a 4.7 on February 2nd, and a 5.3 on February 4th. These progressively larger quakes have begun to cause some limited minor damage to specific structures on the island of Santorini, forming cracks which so far are seemingly consistent with MMI 6 shaking. As you can see, the description for the strength of earthquake shaking not only matches the damage, but it also matches reports by 2 people within the municipality of Santorini. And it also matches the expected rate of various earthquake-generated rockslides and landslides which have remained scattered and uncommon, but have been linked to at least 2 earthquakes in the past day. One of these earthquakes generated a medium-sized landslide at the famous Red Beach, causing boulders to block off part of this pristine shoreline. So, is it completely unsafe to visit Santorini at the present? My answer is still no. Just stay away from steep areas where rockslides and landslides triggered by larger magnitude earthquakes could occur. This is why some tourists have figuratively found the island to themselves, creating great photo opportunities in typically crowded areas. There have been some rumors claiming that portions of the island of Santorini have been uplifted due to the now more than 1,700 tectonic earthquakes which have struck in this lengthy swarm. These claims are true, involving 4 centimeters or 1.6 inches of uplift, but are not for the reason you might think, as this minor uplift is not due to magma movement, but instead due to slip associated with the numerous regional normal fault earthquakes where much of Santorini lies on a footwall. There still is zero unusual volcanic activity unlike, say, during 2011, and these tectonic earthquakes are actually trending towards the northeast over time, at least most notably since January 31st, as you can see, since I plotted the average GPS location each day of all of the earthquakes which struck. This might incorrectly make the ongoing swarm look like magma movement, but there are no signs to indicate such a thing. Instead, these quakes are merely trending the exact same orientation northeast, hopping along the length of regional fault line complexes within the Santorini-Amorgos shear zone. The depth of earthquakes remains largely unchanged as an average, despite what may have looked like a decreasing shallowness for a period of time yesterday. So, how much longer will earthquakes continue to get stronger for? We don't know. I don't know. However, looking at similarly behaving, albeit volcanically triggered earthquake swarms that I am familiar with, one possibility is that somewhere between magnitude 5.2 and 5.5 seems to represent an upper bound for which multiple earthquakes can be generated. If this were to become the case, the largest earthquakes of the day may soon peak at around 5.2 to 5.5, hover around there for a few days, and then begin to decrease. Don't get me wrong, larger earthquakes still can be triggered, as you can see by the isolated singular higher magnitude earthquakes in this chart. And anytime those occur due to the 1/x rate of aftershocks, the rate and size of such aftershocks are likely to temporarily spike for a time in what otherwise might be a downward trend. Remember, about 5% of earthquakes will trigger an earthquake equal to or larger than it. So, as more higher magnitude earthquakes occur, the greater the chance becomes of, say, a magnitude 5.5 or 6+ earthquake occurring. Although, those chances are still low. We can't predict earthquakes, and the scenario I suggested is one of many which could occur, so I will likely end up being wrong here. Don't take those statements that I just said as a true prediction. I also want to note that I tried using this reference scientific paper to make a nice aftershock model and give everyone percentages on the current chances of larger magnitude earthquakes from a purely statistical perspective, but I could not find the correct constant values that made the formulas work, since these vary depending on the area and geologic setting. In other words, when I attempted to place in what seemed to be reasonable constant values, the equation output junk values that didn't pass the eye test. Stay tuned for more updates.
famous tourist destination Santorini is emptying out. More than 11,000 people, locals and tourists, have fled in just days. The reason? A wave of over 300 earthquakes has rocked the island in just 48 hours. Panic spread fast. Flights from Santorini to Athens have tripled, with 15 extra planes deployed. Most evacuees are seeking refuge in the capital. It's not stopping. 550 tremors have been recorded since the weekend, many measured above 3.0 magnitude. The strongest, a 4.9 quake over the weekend, followed by a 4.8 tremor on Tuesday. Santorini, home to 20,000 permanent residents, is now nearly deserted. The usually packed island, which hosts 3.4 million tourists annually, is eerily quiet. Greek authorities are on high alert. The Earthquake Planning and Protection Organization warns that seismic activity could last weeks. A magnitude 6.0 or stronger earthquake isn't ruled out, according to Greece's national broadcaster, ERT. Though no major destruction has been reported, landslides are occurring, rocks are falling from cliffs, schools are shut, and large indoor gatherings are banned. Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis is urging people to stay calm. Meanwhile, 51 firefighters, 9 emergency vehicles, and a fire department helicopter are on standby in Santorini. Santorini sits on the Hellenic volcanic arc, known for its seismic activity, but officials say this isn't volcanic, it's due to tectonic movements beneath the Aegean Sea. The situation is tense. More aftershocks are expected. Authorities are watching closely, but the question remains, will a bigger quake hit next? Stay tuned for more updates.
Don't miss out. Log on to oneindia.com for more updates.
When people think of earthquake threats in the United States, the San Andreas Fault often comes to mind, a tectonic giant stretching nearly the entire length of California, frequently associated with the ominous prediction of the big one. However, over the past 2 decades, scientists have been issuing a different kind of warning. The real seismic danger may not lie along the dramatic Pacific coastline, but in an often overlooked region deep in the nation's heartland, the New Madrid seismic zone. Overshadowed by Hollywood's fixation on California's quakes, the New Madrid fault has remained under the radar for most Americans. But recent tremors, minor yet deeply unsettling, have thrust this seismic zone into the spotlight. The series of earthquakes in this region prompts an intriguing and little explored question. Is there a seasonal preference for earthquakes in the New Madrid seismic zone? And could winter be its favored time? Nestled just east of the well-known tectonic hotbeds of California and the Pacific Northwest, the New Madrid seismic zone extends across parts of Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, Missouri, Illinois, Arkansas, and Mississippi. It is responsible for some of the largest earthquakes ever recorded in the United States east of the Rocky Mountains. Despite its unassuming location, the potential consequences of a major earthquake here are staggering. Experts warn that if a significant earthquake were to strike near the town of New Madrid today, the damage would be catastrophic. Entire communities would face collapsed bridges, crippled infrastructure, widespread disruptions to essential services, and the failure of levees and slopes, affecting a radius of hundreds of miles. The possibility is not just a scientific curiosity, it is a looming danger for those living and working in this region. To understand why scientists are so concerned, we must look back to the early 19th century. In December 1811, an invisible force began to shake the central Mississippi Valley, triggering weeks of relentless seismic activity. The ground heaved so violently that the Mississippi River was seen to rise and fall like a storm-tossed sea. Then, on February 7, 1812, near the town of New Madrid, the land itself warped so drastically that the Mississippi River momentarily reversed its flow. This period of terror, now known as the New Madrid earthquakes, left an indelible mark on the history of American seismology. This extraordinary period began in the early hours of December 16, 1811, when the first seismic shock struck the southern tip of present-day Missouri. At approximately 2 in the morning, rural and urban residents alike were jolted awake as furniture bounced violently and porcelain dishes shattered. Homes, once seen as sanctuaries of safety, began shifting off their very foundations. Those who managed to escape fled into the frigid night, their breath visible in the cold air, as fear and confusion consumed them. For others, caught in their sleep, these homes turned into perilous traps. As darkness lingered before dawn, the ground continued to tremble intermittently, though with less ferocity. By 7 o'clock, another powerful shock struck, sending ripples of fear through an already traumatized population. Later that morning, around 11, an even stronger quake tore through the region. The earth cracked open, releasing thick plumes of mud and sulfurous gas that fouled the air. Witnesses described thousands of birds fleeing the area in apparent panic, their frantic flight a harrowing spectacle against the dim sky. When the seismic violence subsided, the town of Little Prairie, Missouri, lay in ruins, a testament to the quake's relentless fury. The tremors persisted into January 1812, with a particularly devastating quake striking on the morning of January 23rd. This time, Point Pleasant, already heavily damaged, bore the brunt of the destruction. Terrified residents abandoned the area, when some cautiously returned weeks later, they found their town had vanished, submerged into the shifting waters of the Mississippi River. But the devastation was far from over. On February 7, 1812, before dawn, the earth unleashed its most powerful assault yet. With its epicenter directly beneath New Madrid, the quake was so intense that chimneys toppled as far away as Cincinnati, Ohio, over 403.89 miles from the source. The seismic waves rippled outward with terrifying speed, reaching cities like Charleston, Washington, and Boston within minutes. The small river town of New Madrid, already ravaged by the earlier quakes, faced total obliteration. In just 3 minutes, this final shock delivered an unstoppable blow, leveling even the sturdiest brick and stone structures across the region. The violent shaking endured for a staggering 15 minutes, leaving widespread destruction in its wake. St. Louis and Louisville, though farther from the epicenter, sustained significant damage. The human toll was staggering for the time. Out of a population of roughly 15,000 in the affected areas, more than 1,000 lives were lost, and at least 5,000 were left homeless. While these numbers might appear modest compared to more recent disasters in Haiti in 2010 or Turkey in 2023, the context reveals the true scale of the tragedy. With a population density of only 1 person per square kilometer, the impact was devastating. A seismic catastrophe etched forever in the annals of American history. The devastation wrought by the New Madrid earthquakes was not confined to settlers. The native populations, whose numbers were never accurately recorded, also suffered greatly. Their lands were torn apart, leaving a landscape of sand boils, fissures, and crevices. Dead trees littered the ground, swamps were uplifted and drained, and fertile pastures were swallowed by newly formed lakes. Entire villages disappeared, erased from existence as if they had never been. For the fledgling United States, this was an unprecedented disaster. Without seismographs in 1812, the exact magnitudes of these quakes remain unknown, but the strongest is estimated to have exceeded magnitude 8, placing it among the most powerful earthquakes ever recorded in the continental United States. Yet, this catastrophic series of events quickly faded from memory, obscured by the sparse population of the region and the slow dissemination of news in those days. The federal government itself did little to assist the survivors, leaving them to rebuild amid the ruins. Fast forward to the present, and the stakes are far higher. The population in the affected regions has swelled to over 5 million people. If the seismic shocks of 1811 to 1812 were to recur today, the human toll would be unimaginable. Historical records suggest a 7% fatality rate among the sparse populations of the time, a number that, when scaled to current demographics, translates to a staggering estimate of at least 300,000 deaths. The potential for destruction is evident, and the question looms large. What lies beneath the seemingly tranquil hills of Missouri to cause such devastation? It wasn't until the early 20th century that scientists began to systematically investigate this seismic enigma. Geologists descended on the region puzzled by the absence of surface faults like the San Andreas, which typically characterize zones of intense seismic activity. Decades of research ultimately revealed a startling truth. Unlike earthquakes triggered by the friction between tectonic plates, the New Madrid seismic zone lies near the center of the North American plate, buried between 1,968.5 to 2,952.75 feet beneath thick layers of river sediments. While earthquakes occurring far from plate boundaries are rare, they are not unheard of. Even within the most stable tectonic plates, internal deformation can occur, often due to the immense pressures exerted at the plate's edges. Another possibility is the emergence of a new tectonic boundary, a rift zone, signaling the gradual splitting of a plate into two. This theory appears to be the most plausible explanation for the seismic activity in New Madrid. Approximately 0.5% of the seismic energy released globally originates from earthquakes far from tectonic plate boundaries. The remaining 99.5% arises from the more frequent and powerful quakes occurring along plate margins. In the case of the New Madrid seismic zone, the unique geological characteristics of the central United States amplify its impact. The region's harder, colder, drier, and less fractured crust enables seismic waves to propagate over much larger areas compared to earthquakes of similar magnitude in the western United States. The geology of the New Madrid fault zone is composed of sedimentary layers, including limestone, that act like a resonating drumhead, spreading and amplifying seismic shocks. As a result, earthquakes originating in this region can travel farther and cause more widespread damage than those of similar magnitude along the western plate boundaries. Currently, the New Madrid fault zone remains the most significant seismic hazard in North America east of the Rocky Mountains. While earthquakes cannot be predicted with precision, scientists can estimate probabilities based on historical patterns. Research suggests a 10% likelihood of a magnitude 7.5 or greater earthquake in the New Madrid region within the next 50 years, along with a 25 to 40% chance of a magnitude 6 to 7 earthquake in that same period. Such events would undoubtedly result in devastating damage and significant loss of life. Seismic activity in the area is ongoing, with approximately 200 minor earthquakes recorded annually, most of which are too weak to be felt. On average, a magnitude 3 earthquake occurs about once a year, and a magnitude 5 or greater occurs roughly every decade. Despite their rarity, these events remind us that the fault is still active. Recent evidence confirms this persistent activity. On December 9th, a seismic swarm originating at a depth of 5.59 miles affected the region, with 5 earthquakes near Marston, Missouri, and 2 near Ridgely, Tennessee. The strongest reached a magnitude of 3.0, with only some residents noticing the tremors. While these smaller quakes may seem insignificant, they serve as a constant reminder of the underlying seismic threat. Have you ever wondered if earthquakes tend to occur more frequently or with greater intensity during specific months or seasons? This question arises naturally when exploring patterns in seismic activity, particularly in the New Madrid seismic zone. A closer examination reveals an intriguing trend. Most of the largest earthquakes in this region have occurred during the colder months. Take, for instance, the catastrophic series of quakes from 1811 to 1812, all of which took place in the winter. Furthermore, a review of earthquakes exceeding magnitude 4 since that time shows that over 70% occurred between October and March. This includes the region's strongest earthquake since 1900, a magnitude 5.1 event on November 4th, 1903. Coincidence? Perhaps. But such patterns raise questions that go beyond mere chance. Is there a deeper connection between seasonal changes and seismic activity? To understand this, it is crucial to disentangle fact from myth and explore the science behind these phenomena. One long-standing myth is the idea of earthquake weather, a belief that certain atmospheric conditions, such as hot, dry days or overcast skies, can precede earthquakes. This notion traces back to the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle, who theorized in the 4th century BCE that earthquakes were caused by hot winds escaping from underground chambers. Modern seismology has since dispelled this myth. Earthquakes primarily result from tectonic processes, such as the movement and stress within Earth's crust that causes rocks to fracture along fault lines. These events occur deep underground, well beyond the influence of surface weather. Studies show no statistical link between earthquakes and specific weather conditions. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, while drastic atmospheric pressure changes like those caused by hurricanes can occasionally trigger slow earthquakes, these events release energy over extended periods without noticeable ground shaking. The likelihood of such pressure shifts triggering damaging earthquakes is extremely low and statistically insignificant. But what about the broader connection between climate and seismic activity? Unlike weather, which involves short-term atmospheric conditions, climate reflects longer-term patterns. Scientists have found that certain climatic phenomena, such as changes in surface water from rain or snow, can alter stress loads on faults. For instance, heavy rainfall or snow accumulation may increase pressure on fault lines, potentially influencing seismic activity. Conversely, the melting of snow or evaporation of water can reduce stress on the crust. These processes suggest that, under certain conditions, climate might play a subtle role in triggering or inhibiting earthquakes. Although several studies have begun to explore the intriguing connection between seismic activity and climatic processes, the challenge lies in the scale of these observations. Most evidence so far links such phenomena to microseismicity, small earthquakes with magnitudes below the threshold of human perception. For instance, a notable correlation has been identified between microseismic activity in the Himalayas and the annual monsoon season. During summer, the Ganges Plain, which spans the northern Indian subcontinent, experiences significant rainfall. The resulting increase in surface water load compresses the Earth's crust, reducing microseismic activity in the ancient Himalayas. On the other hand, in the dry winter months, when the water weight on the plain diminishes, microseismicity in the Himalayas peaks. This pattern aligns with findings from a study published in Science Advances, which highlights the impact of climatic conditions on seismic activity in northern Japan's Noto Peninsula. Researchers discovered that episodes of heavy snowfall and rainfall have likely contributed to a swarm of earthquakes in this region. They observed that seismic activity in the area is closely tied to fluctuations in underground pressure, which are influenced by seasonal changes in precipitation. The study revealed that snowfall and other environmental loads on the surface directly affect the stress state within the Earth's crust. This, in turn, can lead to seismic responses, demonstrating that the solid Earth interacts dynamically with surface climate conditions. Scientists suspect that this connection between climate and seismic activity is not unique to Japan. It may also influence other regions worldwide. However, they caution that it remains challenging to draw similar conclusions for larger earthquakes. The critical question is whether faults nearing their breaking point could be tipped over the edge by stress changes linked to climatic phenomena. Even less periodic climatic events, such as prolonged droughts, could potentially impact seismic activity. Research conducted by NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in 2017 examined the effects of alternating periods of drought and heavy precipitation in California's Sierra Nevada between 2011 and 2017. The study found that these changes caused the mountain range to rise nearly an inch during drought periods as water was lost from the rocks, then fall by half an inch during subsequent wet periods as water was replenished. Studies have shown that human activities and climatic phenomena can influence seismic activity in ways previously underestimated. For instance, the reckless pumping of groundwater from underground aquifers, often intensified during drought periods, has been found to unload the Earth's crust, altering stress load patterns. A 2014 study published in Nature examined the effects of groundwater extraction in California's Central Valley on the seismicity of the nearby San Andreas Fault. researchers concluded that such extractions could increase stress levels on both sides of the fault, potentially leading to tectonic plate slippage and the release of seismic energy. While these stresses are relatively small, prolonged groundwater pumping could significantly impact seismic behavior, possibly accelerating the timeline for the next major earthquake in the Los Angeles area. Another compelling example is the influence of glaciation. The retreat of glaciers reduces stress loads on the Earth's crust, affecting the movement of subsurface magma. A study published in Geology explored volcanic activity in Iceland during a colder Earth period between 4,500 and 5,500 years ago. It discovered a correlation between deglaciation and increased volcanic activity, with eruptions diminishing when glacial cover expanded. The phenomenon of glacial earthquakes further highlights the connection between climate and tectonics. These powerful seismic events, often exceeding a magnitude of 5.1, occur in regions where glaciers move at rates exceeding 1 kilometer per year. In Greenland, the annual peak of glacial earthquakes occurs in July, August, and September, and their frequency has been rising in tandem with global warming. Human interventions in water management have also been linked to seismicity. The phenomenon known as induced seismicity demonstrates how human actions can inadvertently trigger earthquakes. For example, in 1975, approximately 8 years after Lake Oroville, a major artificial reservoir in Northern California, was filled, a series of earthquakes occurred nearby. The strongest of these registered a magnitude of 5.7, coinciding with a period when the reservoir's water level was drastically lowered for repairs and then refilled. Studies attributed these earthquakes to fluctuations in water levels and corresponding stress changes on local faults. In the following years, researchers observed a seasonal correlation between the reservoir's water levels and seismic activity, with larger earthquakes occurring as water levels dropped in summer and fall. These findings underscore the evolving nature in seismic studies. Until recently, research primarily focused on understanding plate tectonics and processes within the Earth's crust. However, advancements in technology such as GPS, with their enhanced sensitivity and spatial coverage, have enabled scientists to explore additional influences, including climate, the role of water and ice masses, and seasonal variations. The challenge lies in reconciling these potential connections between climatic processes and seismic activity with the fundamental principles of physics. While it is clear that external climatic factors might influence fault systems, predicting when such influences might lead to an earthquake remains far beyond current capabilities. Even when climatic processes appear to impact a fault, scientists cannot yet determine if the fault is at a critical breaking point or if external conditions will provide the final nudge needed to trigger a rupture. As the ground beneath the New Madrid region continues to shift and tremble, the lessons of the past and the subtle warnings of the present underscore the importance of staying informed about the risks posed by this fascinating yet unpredictable fault system. So, what are your thoughts on the recent activity in the New Madrid fault zone? Do you think it hints at something more significant, or is it simply part of the ongoing natural cycle of seismic activity? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this video informative, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more explorations into the Earth's most dynamic and mysterious forces. Stay safe, stay curious, and until next time, thanks for watching.
From a literal bunch of scaredy cats in Osaka, Japan, who felt an earthquake coming before it actually struck, and a 6.1 magnitude quake that nearly destroyed an entire airport in the Philippines, to a powerful tremor in China that sent students ducking for cover, and an event in 2015 that destroyed over 600,000 buildings in Nepal. Here are 10 earthquakes that were caught on CCTV cameras. Izmir is a metropolitan city in western Turkey on the east bank of the Aegean Sea. After Istanbul and Ankara, Izmir is the third most populous city in Turkey and operates as its central hub for exports. The area is a seismically active region, and that activity was on full display around Halloween of 2020. On October 30th of 2020, an earthquake registering between 6.6 and 7.0 struck about 9 miles off the coast of Samos, a Greek island south of Izmir. Employees at an advertising firm in the city braced themselves in the office, hoping the building wouldn't collapse beneath them. We see where the girl in green's priorities lie as she risks everything to grab her phone. Elsewhere in the office, we see hanging lights swinging in the lobby as the girl in green tries to find something to hold on to. Another man hustles to hide under a desk moments before a light fixture falls from the ceiling. Rolling desks and chairs slide across the floor as other office employees try to hold on to something stable. One woman almost gets knocked out by a falling printer. The main quake was followed by 1,400 aftershocks, with 43 registering as 4.0 magnitude mini-quakes. The initial quake also triggered a tsunami, which damaged several coastal towns around the province. Ya'an is a prefecture-level city in western Sichuan province, China. Located just below the Tibetan Plateau, they're mostly worried about monsoons, floods, and landslides. But that doesn't mean they're impervious to other natural disasters. On June 1st of 2022, a 6.1 magnitude earthquake struck Ya'an City. Multiple CCTV cameras from around the area captured everyone's immediate reaction. Some of the most telling footage comes from Lushan Middle School, where students had clearly practiced their earthquake drills. The earthquake strikes, forcing a frightened mom to grab her child and race toward the door. She hesitates, though, as debris may be falling in front of the door. Elsewhere, a sleeping dog takes off after the quake interrupts nap time. At Lushan Middle, students hear the distant sirens and immediately hide under their desks. Once it's safe, their teacher has everyone flee the classroom. An early warning From a literal bunch of scaredy cats in Osaka, Japan, who felt an earthquake coming before it actually struck, and a 6.1 magnitude quake that nearly destroyed an entire airport in the Philippines, to a powerful tremor in China that sent students ducking for cover, and an event in 2015 that destroyed over 600,000 buildings in Nepal. Here are 10 earthquakes that were caught on CCTV cameras. Izmir is a metropolitan city in western Turkey on the east bank of the Aegean Sea. After Istanbul and Ankara, Izmir is the third most populous city in Turkey and operates as its central hub for exports. The area is a seismically active region, and that activity was on full display around Halloween of 2020. On October 30th of 2020, an earthquake registering between 6.6 and 7.0 struck about 9 miles off the coast of Samos, a Greek island south of Izmir. Employees at an advertising firm in the city braced themselves in the office, hoping the building wouldn't collapse beneath them. We see where the girl in green's priorities lie as she risks everything to grab her phone. Elsewhere in the office, we see hanging lights swinging in the lobby as the girl in green tries to find something to hold on to. Another man hustles to hide under a desk moments before a light fixture falls from the ceiling. Rolling desks and chairs slide across the floor as other office employees try to hold on to something stable. One woman almost gets knocked out by a falling printer. The main quake was followed by 1,400 aftershocks, with 43 registering as 4.0 magnitude mini-quakes. The initial quake also triggered a tsunami, which damaged several coastal towns around the province. Ya'an is a prefecture-level city in western Sichuan province, China. Located just below the Tibetan Plateau, they're mostly worried about monsoons, floods, and landslides. But that doesn't mean they're impervious to other natural disasters. On June 1st of 2022, a 6.1 magnitude earthquake struck Ya'an City. Multiple CCTV cameras from around the area captured everyone's immediate reaction. Some of the most telling footage comes from Lushan Middle School, where students had clearly practiced their earthquake drills. The earthquake strikes, forcing a frightened mom to grab her child and race toward the door. She hesitates, though, as debris may be falling in front of the door. Elsewhere, a sleeping dog takes off after the quake interrupts nap time. At Lushan Middle, students hear the distant sirens and immediately hide under their desks. Once it's safe, their teacher has everyone flee the classroom. An early warning went out to 10 million people around the epicenter about 9 seconds before the earthquake struck. Perhaps that's what the students in the second classroom heard over the intercom as they all dropped under their desks in near-perfect unison. Sulawesi is one of the 5 main islands that make up Indonesia. The country itself is the largest archipelago in the world, with over 18,000 islands and inlets under Indonesian control. Most of those islands exist in a complex tectonic setting between the Australian, Pacific, Philippine, and Sunda plates, making them highly susceptible to earthquakes and tsunamis. On September 28th of 2018, a 7.5 magnitude earthquake struck the Minahasa Peninsula, a thin strip of land around the Gulf of Tomini. Aside from 150 aftershocks, the quake also sent several 5-foot tsunami waves crashing into the coast. Then, a massive 18-foot wave washed over the entire island. It looks like a small crowd is preparing for a show. Then, the earthquake strikes. The CCTV camera shakes as the crowd scatters in every direction. Loose objects fall from the ceiling, and people literally throw themselves over the tables in utter panic. Water floods the perimeter, and we can see the floor tiles cracking and popping out of place. Meanwhile, security cameras by the port almost break off their mounts when the earthquake strikes. They remain intact long enough to record a loading crane toppling over and crashing into the pavement. Near the coast, dashcam footage shows the earthquake striking in Kota Palu. Trees bend back and forth as people rush for cover. Water crashes over the seawall, causing one man to debate whether it's safe or not to get in his car and drive away. According to Vox, the earthquake reduced thousands of buildings to rubble and left a complete humanitarian disaster behind. Clark International is an airport in the northern Philippines, servicing domestic and international flights. Clark's history dates back to 1919, when the U.S. Army converted the area into an airfield, and that airfield served as an important overseas base during World War II. The Philippine government took control in the early 90s, and Clark International Airport opened in 1996. 23 years later, on April 22nd of 2019, a 6.1 magnitude earthquake rocked Clark International and those inside. Travelers grabbed their loved ones and scattered for cover, but some wound up trapped when debris began falling from the ceiling. A terminal full of eager travelers descends into chaos as the earthquake shakes everything inside, including our CCTV cameras. One man gets stuck on a banister after getting through security. He almost drags the entire line with him. We see another security team panic as they run for cover. Debris and light fixtures fall from the ceiling, narrowly missing 2 women. At the check-in area, people cover their heads and hope for the best. And at the end of the line, we see a few men barely escape outside before the roof caves in above them. Aftermath shots of check-in and the departure area make one thing pretty clear. A powerful earthquake just tore through Clark International Airport. Kathmandu is the capital of Nepal and serves as the country's most important business district. But on April 25th of 2015, a powerful 7.8 magnitude earthquake brought business to a grinding halt. It was the worst natural disaster to strike the country in nearly 100 years. To make things worse, the quake triggered an avalanche on Mount Everest that claimed 22 lives, the deadliest day in Everest history. Entire villages crumbled, leaving hundreds of thousands of people homeless throughout the country. In the city of Tripureshwar, CCTV cameras captured the moment when the earthquake struck. Scooters, cars, and foot traffic navigate the busy intersection. It's hard to imagine driving like that, but local Nepalis are pretty used to it. Then, the ground starts shaking and people start running. Cars stop in their tracks as clusters of people gather in the street, not wanting to stand near any tall buildings. Nobody moves once the quake subsides. They are well aware an aftershock could strike at any moment. Now, this clip doesn't do justice to the total destruction experienced that day. Elsewhere in Nepal, 600,000 structures were either damaged or completely leveled. 9,000 people lost their lives, but the toll could have been much higher if the earthquake didn't strike when it did. Many locals were working outside, away from tall buildings and other falling debris when it hit. On August 14th of 2021, a 7.2 magnitude earthquake rocked the Tiburon Peninsula, a region in southwestern Haiti. Tsunami warnings spread across the Haitian coast, but there was little anybody could do. It was the worst earthquake to strike Haiti since 2010 and the deadliest natural disaster of 2021. Customers at a local grocery store were doing their weekly shopping when the earthquake suddenly struck. CCTV cameras from inside the store show us how powerful a 7.2 magnitude tremor can be. A woman strolls down the aisle, clueless that a powerful earthquake is about to ruin her day. She makes it halfway down when the ground starts shaking, causing her and another woman to hightail it out of the store. Seconds later, everything comes flying off the shelves. Coolers roll away from the wall. In fact, the whole store slides like it's on wheels. Like our grocery store, several other buildings in the area were damaged or completely destroyed during the quake. You may have seen this clip go viral on social media as it amassed over 3 million views on TikTok. With just under 300,000 people, Anchorage is the most populous city in Alaska. As the state capital, it's home to about 40% of the population, and the city itself covers more land area than Rhode Island. Now, while you might not think of earthquakes when you picture Alaska, they're actually pretty common, with a magnitude 7 or higher occurring every 1 or 2 years. On Friday, November 30th of 2018, one of those 7.0s struck north of Anchorage around 8:30 a.m. The National Tsunami Warning Center, conveniently located inside the quake zone in Palmer, Alaska, issued warnings to the nearby coastal areas. Meanwhile, CCTV cameras inside the Alaska Children's Academy preschool caught the entire event on camera. A camera in a small one-on-one classroom shakes as the earthquake knocks loose items off the shelf. According to the staff, the CCTV cameras were on hooks, which is why they shook so violently. Thankfully, the school is always closed on Fridays. In another part of the school, we see the earthquake strike the main learning area. Kudos to those chairs for not falling off the desks. According to reports, about 117 people suffered minor injuries, ranging from small cuts and bruises to broken bones. And while our preschool stood strong, other schools closer to the epicenter on Point Mackenzie suffered severe damage. Overall, the earthquake caused about $30 million in damage across the city. Osaka, Japan is the third most populous city in the country, located on the banks of Osaka Bay on Honshu Island. The city plays a crucial role in Japan's economy and is highly regarded among the most multicultural cities in East Asia. It's also home to the Osaka Exchange, one of 4 primary stock exchanges in Japan. When all those business people need a place to relax, they visit one of Osaka's many cat cafes. Here, they can enjoy some peace and quiet, have a snack, and hang out with cats for about 200 yen per 10 minutes. But on June 18th of 2018, when a 6.1 magnitude earthquake struck the city, the cat cafes were anything but peaceful. We see the cats hopping down from their beds. They can tell something is up. Then the earthquake strikes, sending every feline in the building scattering like, well, scaredy cats. Once the ground stops shaking, all of them seem to chill out. They go right back to being lovable, lazy kitty cats. Clearly, these cats knew something was about to happen. But what does science say about animals predicting earthquakes? According to the U.S. Geological Survey, most of the evidence is anecdotal, meaning we don't know for sure, but enough people claim they've seen it. They can certainly feel it before we do, as seen in this video. Earthquakes emit two waves, a primary P wave and a secondary and more powerful S wave. Basically, animals can feel the P wave, but humans can't. Most wave pools leverage water displacement to send rolling waves toward excited swimmers. It's similar to how earthquakes and landslides trigger tsunamis. But this pool outside a Nepali hotel during the 2015 earthquake wasn't supposed to make waves that big. It wasn't supposed to make waves at all. CCTV cameras were rolling when the earthquake struck. We apologize in advance for the shaky footage. What begins as a calm day by the pool quickly descends into complete chaos. The security camera starts shaking as the earthquake strikes, like a child rattling a wrapped Christmas present. Water splashes over the sides of the pool, causing waves to flow back and forth. The waves get bigger with each lap, but eventually calm down as the earthquake subsides. Thankfully, nobody decided that April 25th of 2015 was a good day for a swim. At least, nobody staying at this hotel. On September 5th of 2022, a 6.6 magnitude earthquake struck in Sichuan province, China. Its primary target was Luding County, a community of about 86,000 people. Considering it missed Sichuan's capital city of Chengdu, home to more than 21 million people, things could have been much worse. A couple was driving home when the earthquake struck Luding County. Their dashcam recorded the entire ordeal as the ground rattled around their car. Our driver slams on the brakes as the earthquake strikes. The way the trees bend back and forth, it almost looks like a tornado is tearing through town. Awnings collapse in piles of dust, and we see one man sprinting down the road for dear life. Our driver thinks about pulling off to the side, but realizes they're safer in the middle of the street and away from falling debris. According to Reuters, all 21 million people felt the quake in Chengdu, but most of the damage was localized in Luding County. The quake also triggered a few landslides, which damaged several roads and homes near the epicenter. People in Luding claim the earthquake was so strong it was hard to remain standing. Judging from the dashcam footage, we're inclined to believe them. If you enjoyed this video and want to see another just like it, then be sure to click the link on screen now. With that, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you for being here and taking the time to subscribe. I'm meteorologist Brian Shields. All right, taking a look at a new earthquake. We talked about this one, the 5.6 in magnitude yesterday. We were talking about this in yesterday's video right near Guatemala. It was followed up yesterday afternoon by about a 4.1 in magnitude. The depth of this first one, the stronger one, was well down there, 58 kilometers down or 36 miles underground. That's good. It was felt. But again, not substantially, which is good, but it was followed up by another earthquake. So this is a pocket I'm watching. And then, of course, watching over toward Puerto Rico, where we've had those rumblings, which we typically do many times. I'm not seeing anything too substantial here, which is some good news. Here's the Dominican Republic. Here's Puerto Rico. So you have the North Hispaniola Fault right through here, the Puerto Rico Trench right through here. So it's a very active area, point being. And we've had some of those quakes a little bit stronger just to the north of the British Virgin Islands. Here are the British and U.S. Virgin Islands through here. It is an earthquake cluster, so we are seeing a few earthquakes here, as we often do, but no significant quakes. A lot of these have been 2 to about the 3 range in magnitude, so 3 and about less. But I'm watching these spots here across Central America and back through the Caribbean. Then we swing out here. Here's Italy. Then we get over toward Greece. Since late January, there's been 1,000 earthquakes in this area. There's tons of earthquakes each day across Earth, but in this area in particular, watching it very carefully, a volcanic area right here. So that is grabbing some headlines, no doubt. And there was a recent earthquake from overnight, closer to Athens, over 4 in magnitude. So you see all of these quakes that have been popping up. So again, high concern here. You get over toward Santorini, beautiful island. People have been leaving, fearful of maybe a volcano or an earthquake, not sure quite how these are tied together. Sometimes you get earthquakes, doesn't mean you're going to get a volcano, but of course of high concern to see such an extreme amount of earthquakes happening in this area. So I'll keep you up to date on that as well. We're thinking of our friends elsewhere. This morning, overnight, I've been watching a couple showers that have been scraping by parts of Venezuela, trying to lift up towards St. Lucia. There's been a few around overnight. And there was a little pocket for us in southern Belize. I've been watching that, so we'll see some of that moisture kind of feeding in. Not widespread, but watching out for some areas of rain to the north. It is that west-to-east motion, another big area rolling into California, Kentucky, and West Virginia. There's been some severe weather, but with these fronts up here, even bordering parts of Canada, we still have that warm flow. Nothing's dipping down yet, but I want to go out in time in just a moment and show you some bigger fronts which are eventually going to swing down more to the south. Short term, watching out for some spotty showers. May catch 1 or 2 near Jamaica, a few near Nicaragua, Costa Rica. Hit or miss showers, though. Barbados, Trinidad, we may get 1 or 2. A little bit more Guyana and Suriname. And then even near the Turks and Caicos, a chance of a few showers today. I'll show you those winds in just a moment. Going out in time here, this is by tomorrow afternoon. A few more Belize and Honduras. We may get brushed by a shower. Cayman Islands, Jamaica. And then as you get back toward the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, St. Kitts and Nevis, Anguilla, Antigua, Barbuda, the rain chance is not high, but a passing shower. 1 or 2 at times. Trinidad and Tobago, a little bit more Guyana and Suriname. Could see a couple near Dominica as we go forward, and then still near Belize, Honduras, and Nicaragua. This is by Saturday afternoon. Watching out for some scattered showers that will be around. The wind staying persistent out of the east. I mentioned earlier all of those storm systems up into the U.S. That keeps those winds out of the east, and then for some of us, a flow more out of the south, but still a little bit gusty at times. Southern Bahamas and then south. That keeps the seas choppier. We're seeing some of the gusts around 56 kilometers an hour or 35 miles per hour. So yeah, not the best for certain boating conditions in some areas. Now watching one system here. This is the one that's moving toward the Atlantic region of Canada today, parts of New England, but they stayed to the north. So we have that easterly flow intact, and some of that moisture kind of pumps in from parts of the Pacific, giving us scattered showers in parts of Central America. Here again, another system rolling into California. But this energy stays up to the north. You see it right there. So again, not really diving down to the south. So this is by the time we get into Sunday, another system, but that front stays to the north. That keeps everything very warm across the Caribbean. But you see this system building up here. That means some spotty showers as we work our way into the weekend, which I'll be fine-tuning further for us. But these systems kind of moving up toward the northeast U.S., clipping by parts of the Atlantic region of Canada. And then yet again, as we work our way into next week, another system. Now this one, though, will start to dive down a little bit more to the south. You see it here.
Over 500 earthquakes have struck Santorini in just a few days. At this point, most of them are small, but they are intensifying. So far, the largest quake, a magnitude 5, has triggered small rock slides, school closures, and some island evacuations with people fearing the worst. This kind of seismic activity, hundreds of smaller earthquakes, is called an earthquake swarm. So what's causing it, and what happens next? Here's what we do know. The island of Santorini is actually an exposed section of an underwater volcano. It's part of a chain of volcanoes in the area, but scientists do not think this swarm is pointing to a volcanic eruption. The Santorini caldera, as it's called, is active. It last erupted in 1950, and past eruptions are what actually inspired the legend of the lost city of Atlantis. But I took a look at the raw seismic data, and the quakes seem to be connected to an underwater fault line rather than magma movement. The volcanic arc exists because about 250 kilometers to the south, one massive chunk of Earth is moving under another massive chunk of Earth, and that's causing magma to reach the surface in the form of volcanoes and creating local fault lines, underground points of tension, one of which does seem to be the culprit for these hundreds of tremors. So is this swarm a sign of a bigger quake to come? It could be. Other parts of the world get earthquake swarms, like here in BC. It's a sign that there's major tension underground. And when we get the big one, it will be during one of these swarms. So a larger release of tension on that Santorini fault line could happen. And since it's underwater, a tsunami would be a big concern. But the mechanics in Greece are not quite the same as in BC. We've never seen this here before, and there is never certainty when it comes to predicting large earthquakes. In the meantime, with every new earthquake, scientists are getting more clues about what exactly is happening down below.
Hey, how's it going out there, folks? Welcome back here to a Thursday, 11:21 a.m. California time. February 6, 2025 is the date. Nice and rainy out here in Northern California. Latest activity here on the earthquake 3D globe shows a 1.8 across Southern California. A little bit of movement popping up here across the west coast, off the coast of Canada as well, towards the Cascadia subduction zone. We'll check on that here in just a minute. Right now, top story, the Santorini area of Greece, still seeing a bunch of earthquakes out here popping. Nothing big has happened yet, although the Greece area has declared a state of emergency on Santorini after earthquakes prompt more than 10,000 to evacuate there. I couldn't even imagine the fear that must be going through some of these folks' mind. Probably best, right, to make sure that everyone is safe and away from the area, just in case an all-out big volcanic eruption takes place. So since Sunday, hundreds of near-constant tremors have been recorded in the sea between Santorini and the island of Amorgos, the strongest measuring a magnitude of 5.2 on Wednesday night. Now, authorities there in the region warned of a high landslide risk on parts of the island, in which they have, of course, shut down schools, dispatched rescuers, and advised residents to avoid ports and indoor gatherings. Now, a lot of, they think that this is still just earthquake activity or maybe fault systems out here, plate tectonics here in action, but you know me. I think this is leaning more towards a volcanic eruption. Santorini here took its current shape following one of the largest volcanic eruptions in history, which happened around 1600 BC, long time ago, a couple thousands of years ago. Could we be heading up to that point right now? Who knows? Looking at the map filter, let me bring this up here. The last 24 hours, okay, this is the last 24 hours in the region. We got 234 events. That's still a pretty significant amount of earthquakes here. And I believe, let's check out the USGS model over here. A couple more, well, at least one more for today that the USGS is reporting after midnight. The seismograph stations out there are still quite active with earthquakes. Let me refresh this, make sure I got the recent data. A little bit less active, it looks like, overnight compared to yesterday, but we've seen this type of event a day or so ago where we had a little bit of quietness, not so many fours, and then it ramped back up as we seen yesterday. A bunch of fours involved in there in that mess of a seismograph station. But this year is the last 24 hours, and the multitudes are still there, 234, and it's thousands of earthquakes here. I don't know how far back this goes. It shows 1,378, but that could be in the last week or so. I don't know exactly if this is in total tally, because some are showing that this is well over 2,000 earthquakes. But nonetheless, a little bit of migration here towards the Santorini area, which is right here. You got the Colombo volcano, and the majority of these quakes are, well, they're up and down all over the place in terms of the depth of these earthquakes. Here's a simple layout here showing the depth here on the side. 0 kilometers down to 25 kilometers here in the time span since February 4th. Now, it's been consistent here since then over the past few days or so, with multiple 5s in there as well. A lot of shallow activity, nothing really at the surface level. I think if that was the case, we'd be looking at an impending immediate eruption here at any point. But it's been down there about 5 kilometers or so and deeper, which would tell me that this is a magma intrusion event underneath this area and localized to the region. which is the Santorini Colombo volcano, with some migration over here towards the Santorini area. You know, who knows what's going to happen? This could be a worst case scenario where we have a complete blowout here between a couple different volcanoes. You just never know. This has not gone away. It's not going away. I'll be surprised if it does. But looks like they're doing the best they can to get people out of harm's way. You know, these poor folks out here looking back as they leave the area. You know, I can only imagine what's going through their mind. You know, what's going to be left of my house? Are we going to see anything? You know, these guys have an uncertain future right now. But as long as that earthquake swarm is occurring like it is, then it's best to avoid the area, whether it's in regards to a big earthquake coming up or a volcanic eruption there in the area. A lot of ferry departures from the Santorini area. So according to this folks here, it's called ferryhopper.com. They're the folks that are evacuating some of the people there off the Santorini region. According to the Greek authorities and seismologists, these tremors are due to tectonic plate movements rather than volcanic activity. They still keep saying that. It's interesting that they're saying that, but I guess, you know, to keep the fears down. But imagine if the worst case scenario happens. Say that whole area blows up and there's a huge tsunami produced from that underwater explosion. That could be a worst case scenario. And then what would they say? Because the facts are right there. You know, they have all the data pointing towards an impending potential eruption out here. They couldn't say anything. They'd be eating their own words. So right now, no one knows exactly what's going to take place here. I don't have a time machine. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't think anyone does. But it's leading up to something. I don't see this thing just dying off here anytime soon. There's a lot of the earthquakes there in the last, what do I have here? Last 10 days, I believe. Zoom in here. These guys showing a couple smaller quakes here around the Santorini area. A little bit of southward migration recently. It does seem like most of the recent larger quakes, the 4s and some of the 5s, are happening down here on the southern end of this earthquake swarm, which would potentially be a sign of maybe some buildup further down below the area in this region. But it's hard to say. Nothing directly underneath the Santorini area, but who knows what's going to take place. We could see rapid acceleration towards this area. And it's just, it's a waiting game here. A lot of the depth of these earthquakes, as I showed you, is fairly deep, 10 kilometers. A couple of them pretty shallow, but the consistency here of the consistency of the inconsistency, I should say, in the depth of the earthquakes, or what's worrying, because we're seeing deeper earthquakes followed up by more shallow earthquake activity, which tells me there that magma's building up underneath the region, adding stress across the fault boundaries up here, the fault systems, and that's what would happen. You wouldn't see anything else other than what we're seeing right now if you know, with that volume of magma building up underneath this area. It makes sense to see fractures and earthquakes up above the magma chamber. If this was going on, you know, across the Italy area, around the Campi Flegrei area, could you imagine the craziness that would be going on right now? Multiple 5s, thousands of earthquakes. They've had their own little swarm out there, but nothing like what these guys are seeing over here. So I'm at least glad that these guys are taking the warning and getting some people out of the area. A live look at the seismograph station there, which is positioned down south here, the 4D station right here. That's going to be that seismograph station over here. It doesn't really pick up anything below 3.0. So even though it looks like there's nothing showing up right now, I'm sure there's earthquake activity occurring in there. And most of the time, the earthquake 3D globe here will show it. Check the EMSC model here real quick. Stand by for just a second. This is the last, I believe that's the last Is this last 2 weeks? I guess it is, isn't it? Oh, no, 24 hours. There we go. That's still a lot of earthquake activity. Look what's happening over here. There's definitely some broader scale event, too. It looks like it's unfolding. There's been a little speculation on whether this could blow out. Maybe it's a hot spot and it could see a super volcano eruption, but you never know. There's a possibility. Let's go to the last week here and take a look at some of the earthquakes. There's a lot on there. There's thousands. Not for sure if this is going to show how many there is, but yeah, it doesn't look like it's going to. And there's fault systems out there, but it's a volcanic arc area with many different submarine volcanoes, and the Santorini area has had some famous eruptions there in the past, and I don't think we would want to see that today. Unconfirmed reports of a felt event in northern Italy. Not for sure what that is. I don't really see anything showing up there right now. The Italy area. There's that 3.6 from, is that today? It does look like it's from today. Yep, 24 hours. Not a big deal. The big deal right now is down south there across this area. Let me check out the USGS model, see what we have here. Of course, they're only going to show 4.0 and above, and that's a decent number. 87 earthquakes there, 4.0 and above. That's unusual to see that many earthquakes on the USGS map internationally. The largest being a 5.3, 6 miles there below the surface. And these guys are keeping the depth of these earthquakes consistent there at 6 miles. There's a deeper one, a 4.4, a little bit further south here. Notice that migration pattern here across this area? It's interesting. According to an interview with the president of Greece Earthquake Planning and Protection Organization, OASP, this person right here, I'm not going to even attempt that. The current situation is that the seismic swarm is still evolving. They pointed out 3 most likely scenarios how might it evolve. The intense earthquake activity might continue for several weeks or even months without significantly larger earthquakes as already seen. It then eventually fades out over a period of time. What's the other 2 scenarios? Where'd they go? 3 most likely scenarios, but they only include 1. All right. Anyway, it's a waiting game. It's a watching game. All we can do right now is watch and see, but the good thing is that they're getting some of these folks out of that area, because I would definitely be getting out of there as well if I lived out there. I talk about going out there and maybe observing the activity, but at the same time, that'd be kind of a little sketchy trip. But it would be good to document and see what's going on as far as land rise and stuff like that out there. But I don't have any plans of going out there. All right, let's see what we have here. Little earthquake on Petrolia, Northern California. A bunch down in China Lake, Southern California. The one in Northern California here looks to be this earthquake right here. 1.8 showing up there on the seismograph station. I'm just glad they're reporting some of these smaller quakes now. For a couple weeks there, following the 7-pointer in Northern California, we're getting multiple ones here, and they never reported them. So it looks like they haven't included the threshold there, which is good, because that way we can see what's going on out here across Northern California. Looking at the earthquake 3D globe here, there's a little bit happening up north, across the northern end of the Cascadia subduction zone off the coast of Canada there. Some across the Blanco fracture zone, it looks like. Definitely got some plate movement and adjustment going on here across the Cascadia subduction zone area back prior to that. The Blanco fracture zone here should add further strain with this type of fracture boundary. tremor activity has actually been elevated out here, if I recall from yesterday. Let me take a look. 153 epicenters of tremor down right here, right pretty much off the Blanco fracture zone, in an area where we would expect some activity to stir up. But that event there on the Blanco fracture zone is actually from this morning. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the tremor today. Maybe a little bit more elevated down in that region. The rest of the area, as far as Northern California earthquake activity goes, got these smaller quakes out here. Nothing big for now. The Bay Area, San Francisco, pretty quiet. Southern California, not a whole lot popping down there. Generally small microquake activity up and down the board. No unusual swarming. The San Andreas Fault here sleeps for now, but that may not always be the case out here. Earthquakes out across the oil fields, and one around the Appalachian Mountains there, 1.9 around the Tellico Plains, Tennessee. I've never been to Tennessee before. Furthest east I've been was Ohio. Actually I think I went to first and second grade up there, but that's about it. I haven't been back east in a little while. Furthest east recently I've been is Louisiana, down there doing a little storm chasing. All right, let's take a look at the rest of the globe here. Another 3.4 coming into the Santorini area right now. That is showing up quite nicely on that seismograph station there. It goes to show you these three show up pretty nicely. Anything bigger, of course, will as well. But this most recent quake, these guys are showing it as a 4.6. Which would make sense because that looks like a pretty big signature there. I see 4.6, 1934. That would be the time period right now. So yeah, interesting. And that's right in the middle of that clustering there across the area near Colombo region. But there's, like I say, there's a number of submarine volcanoes and seamounts out here. Just looking at this whole area, it's a mess of dynamics here. I'm gonna have to watch this pretty closely. So we got 4.6 right there in the mix. It's weird that they're not reporting that on there, but okay, we'll check back on it. Japan, a little bit of swarming going on here just in the Japan Trench. Some forest stirring up. A little bit of movement here. 3.1 across. Looks like it's just going to be off the coast here of South Korea area. That earthquake not showing up on the USGS map, but it is on the globe. Still watching the Nankai Trough area. Nothing major happening around here. Got a couple fives around the Indonesia Islands area, but that's typical on any given day. Nothing major going on across New Zealand. South America area, roughly about the same. The Atlantic Ocean, pretty quiet. A couple smaller quakes. There's a 4.6 showing up right now. Yeah, it's definitely a decent signature on that graph. (1,367) earthquakes here being recorded. I think that may just be the last 7 days. I know there's more than that, but I'm not for sure exactly how to change that here. But these, I don't want to go this because then it will remove all the smaller quakes, like the last 48 hours of 3.0 and above here. That's still a lot of activity. But it's important to watch the smaller quakes as well, because that tells us what's going on as far as maybe surface fracturing, any type of strain out here, migration. This looks similar, eerily similar to Iceland back when the eruption there across the Svartsengi area was happening, before all the regular intervals of eruptions that we experienced here over the last year in Iceland. We noticed a big swelling of area like that and fracturing away from the main swarm, which would indicate magma underneath the region there. I mean, it's all focused mainly around the Colombo volcano. Some migration south, but again, we'll just see what happens, folks. That's all we can do right now, okay? Let's check out the space weather activity. Little larger M flare overnight, an M8 no, it was up in the 8 range, pretty certain it was. Pretty close, M7.6 it looks like. Since then, it's gone down. Let's go ahead and check out the space weather activity, see what we have. Yeah, M7.6 from 3981. That's going to be the sunspot I've been chatting about here in the last couple updates. The only one of noteworthy complexity in terms of the magnetic structure. Still quite a bit of popcorn, different intermixing of the colors there that creates that special spark in the sunspot called a solar flare. That's still quite active. Rest of the areas out here, even though it's got large coverage, not a whole lot of complexity. Same for the areas back across the eastern limb. So if it's going to do anything, if 3981 is going to pop off a major flare or a subsequent CME, you should probably do it now. Otherwise, it's going to be Earth directed away from the Earth. It's it's good for the aurora watchers, right? A lot of people love to watch the auroras, and right now, nothing major in the aurora forecast. Pretty quiet across the board. There's your flare threat, 25% chance for X flare, M flare, 85% chance. Taking a look at the next 5 close approach asteroids to the planet. Still got to put out my video in regards to 2024 YR2, which is, I think, up to a 300-foot size asteroid that has a chance of hitting the planet in the year 2032. So we're looking at, 7 years or so. That is definitely within my lifetime, I hope. I mean, I don't want it to hit us, but hopefully I'll extend that long. No one knows how much time they have on the planet, right? But interesting. I still got to cover that a little bit more. Just been busy with school here. A 9-foot car size, a 9-foot size car. That's a little one. 319,000 miles. It's pretty safe, and it's a super small asteroid. Nothing big or close in the approach for now, but they're always discovering asteroids. Look at that, 2025, 2025. These are newly discovered asteroids. All right, Storm Prediction Center for severe weather. Got a slight risk out here across the Tennessee area. Slight risk for some severe weather. A little 2% chance for tornado activity. Wind. Looks like wind could be a big deal. And a little bit of hail out there as well. Right now, Northern California dealing with some rainfall. Had a little bit of flooding out here. A lot of roads closed. In fact, they closed down Highway 32 from Chico to Hamilton City there in Butte County yesterday. I think it's open now. Quite a few back roads around here flooded. That storm system, it'd be out of here by tonight. And going to make a little bit of clearing out here across the west coast here for a few days. And then we got some more rain headed in as we head towards the middle and end of next week here with some Pacific Coast storm systems, which is okay by me because it's made a dent in the drought out here. Let me tell you, January was a super dry month for us, and it's looking much promising now as far as getting out of that drought. Look at that, almost wiped clean away the surface and the deeper levels. Moisture anomaly, of course, we are soaked out here. So a couple days of drying out will be good here across Northern California in the valley. All right, let's see what else is there, folks. I think that is about it. Can't think of anything else here. Like I say, we'll just we'll continue to watch that. Again, I do have a seismograph station there, the Raspberry Shake Data Station 4D here, picking up that 4.6. A little smaller earthquake after that, looks like. That's probably going to be a 3.3. Oh, no, that's at 11:12. There's a little spike of a quake right there too. So 4.6. They haven't included that smaller one yet. Anyway, wow, looks like they've updated that the location of that 4.6, sitting a little bit further south here. It's going to be this quake right here. Got to watch that. You know, it's interesting that it's taken this southern migration here. All right, I'm out of here, folks. We'll catch you guys back out here a little bit later on this evening, unless something major happens here. Don't forget, we have the member drawing coming up here on the 15th of the month. It's something we've been doing here for a number of years, where we recognize and support our members by giving back to you that support us. And we'll give away cash prizes or geology mining kits, or if you like some Earthmaster merchandise, such as a t-shirt and whatnot, you're welcome to choose from that. Jump on board and be entered into the Magic Fish Bowl, where we do our live drawings and pick out a winner. Sometimes we'll do a couple winners each drawing. I think I did 3 at one time. Who knows? I'm kind of feeling generous, so I'll probably hand out a couple winners on the 15th. So you just got to become a member today. You don't have to be a top member, the lowest member. As far as status goes, all are entered into the member drawing regardless. So jump on board. And I think you can do that on your mobile device now as well. I don't know if they fix that, but if not, you'll have to go onto a desktop and click become a member of this channel. All right, have a good one, folks. We'll continue to watch this and, of course, report back on anything that changes out here. For now, stay safe. Have a good day.
We're here in Santorini, where the normally busy clifftop streets have fallen quiet. Behind me, you can see a caldera, a volcanic crater. But these famous views that draw millions each year are now being enjoyed by just a handful of visitors. It's the 5th day of continuous seismic activity in the region, with undersea earthquakes of up to magnitude 5. The authorities have expanded precautionary measures to 13 islands. Experts say the tremors are unrelated to volcanic activity, but the frequency, sometimes every few minutes, has led to thousands of residents and seasonal workers leaving to temporarily relocate. These streets are typically bustling even in the off-season. Local authorities are implementing widespread precautions. Schools are closed, public events are cancelled, and construction work has been halted in vulnerable areas. Ferry operators have put on extra services to accommodate those who want to leave, but not everyone is going. Some residents, particularly those who have lived here for decades, are choosing to stay, with a small number of tourists who are finding themselves with an unusually peaceful version of Santorini to themselves.
In the early hours of Tuesday morning, hundreds of people crowded the port in Santorini to board a ferry and reach safety in Athens. A tremor with a magnitude of 4.9 was recorded by the European Mediterranean Seismological Center on the Greek island, whose popular villages cling to steep cliffs over the sea. Here is Santorini's mayor, Nikos Zorzos.
We must deal with it with patience and calm. This seismic activity may last many weeks.
Since last Friday, hundreds of quakes have been registered every few minutes in the sea between the volcanic islands of Santorini and Amorgos.
We have designated shelter areas on level surfaces for people without structures. There are 8 places that can accommodate them. We have recorded all individuals with special needs who may require transfer at some point during an event. We have made a food distribution plan for those who will be outdoors.
With seismologists estimating that the intense seismic activity could last for days or even weeks, people were advised to stay out of coastal areas. Schools in Santorini and the nearby islands of Ios, Amorgos and Anafi were also shut down until Friday. However, not everyone was eager to leave. Here is local resident Eftichis Diamantopoulos.
We will stay here. Why should we leave? If something happens, it happens. Oh well, we are locals. We were born here. We are guarding Thermopylae. There has been seismic activity. Whatever will happen, will happen. There is no reason to panic.
Greece sits at the boundary of the African